The envelope had my address on it, but my son's name printed in bold across the front. Not mine. His. Underneath his name was a line that made my chest tighten. Notice of new credit activity. I stood just inside the doorway, keys still in my hand, staring at the paper like it might rearrange itself into something harmless. My son was 9 years old. The only thing he'd ever signed up for was a summer reading challenge at the library, and even that required my permission. So why was there credit activity in his name? I tore the envelope open right there in the hallway. No patience, no ceremony. Just a mother trying to outrun whatever was written inside. The letter was polished and polite in the way bad news usually is. It explained that a lender had recently accessed my son's information in connection with a personal loan application. A personal loan. The words didn't even look real sitting next to his name. My hands went cold. I walked into the kitchen and placed the letter flat on the counter, as if it might explode if I held it too long. Then I did what any parent would do. I grabbed my phone and started searching. Fretted alert for minor. Every result said the same thing in different words. This may indicate identity theft. I actually whispered, "No, no, no." Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. My son shuffled in, still half asleep. "Are we late?" he mumbled. I folded the letter quickly, forcing calm into my voice. "Nope, go get your shoes." He walked away, unaware that someone might have just borrowed from his future. The first number on the letter connected me to a fraud department representative named Denise. She sounded efficient, steady, the kind of voice that deals with chaos before breakfast. When I told her my son was 9, her tone sharpened. "Can you confirm his date of birth?" she asked. I did. Then she asked for the last 4 digits of his social security number. I hesitated, but gave it. There was typing on her end. "Yes," she said slowly. "I do see an inquiry tied to a loan application." My grip tightened around the phone. "From where?" "I can't disclose full details over the phone, but I can confirm the lender and the date. Last week, we were building a Papirum Chie volcano for school, and while he was worrying about baking soda explosions, someone was applying for a loan in his name. Is there more than one inquiry?" I asked. There was a pause. "Wes." The word hit harder than the first. She explained something called an inquiry history. A full list of every time his information had been accessed. I asked her to send it immediately. Before hanging up, I asked one more question. "Is there a phone number attached to any of the applications?" "Yes," she replied carefully. "I can confirm if it matches one you provide." My stomach dropped before I even spoke. I gave her a number I knew by heart. There was silence. Then softer typing. "It matches." I didn't need her to say more. The number belonged to my sister. The same sister who came to birthday parties. The same sister who hugged my son last month. The same sister who always talked about loyalty and family like she owned the definition. I ended the call without saying anything reckless. For a few seconds, I stared at her name in my contacts list. I almost called her, but I didn't. Calling her would give her time to prepare, to deny, to spin it into me overreacting. Instead, I did something she wouldn't expect. I went straight to my bank. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't loud. I simply asked a very specific question. "Can you check if any recent loan deposits were made to an account connected to this phone number?" The banker, Caleb, didn't dismiss me. He listened carefully. After reviewing the letter, He said something that made my pulse spike. If someone used his information once, he said quietly, it's rarely just once. He advised me to freeze my son's credit file immediately and obtain the full inquiry history. That list, he said, is your map. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text message from my sister. Random question. Did you check your mail today? My throat tightened. That wasn't random. That was someone checking if the trap had snapped shut. I looked at Caleb and said, I need that inquiry list. Today. He nodded once, and in that moment, something shifted inside me. The panic was still there, but now it had direction. Because if there really was a list, what else was my sister hiding? And more importantly, how far had she already gone? The list no one expected. By the time I got home from the bank, I wasn't shaking anymore. I was focused. Caleb's 3 words replayed in my head like instructions carved into stone: freeze, list, trace. First, I locked my son's credit file. The process was disturbingly simple. A few verification questions, a few clicks, a confirmation number. Just like that, his identity was sealed, at least from new damage. But sealing the door doesn't tell you who already walked through it. An hour later, the secure email arrived from the bureau. Subject line: inquiry history, minor file. My chest tightened before I even opened it. I clicked. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was clinical. A plain document listing dates, company names, and inquiry types. And there weren't just 1 or 2 entries. There were 7. 7 different times someone had pulled my 9-year-old son's social security number. Personal loan lender. Another personal loan lender. A buy, now pay, later financing company. A retail credit card inquiry. A background screening service. And then, auto finance. Dated yesterday. Yesterday, while my son was at soccer practice arguing about shin guards, someone was trying to finance a vehicle with his identity. My hands went cold again, but this time the fear was sharper. Controlled. I called the auto finance reference number listed on the inquiry. A cheerful receptionist answered. Northgate Motors, how can I help you? My name is. I stopped myself from sounding frantic. I need to speak to your finance manager regarding a credit application tied to a minor. Her tone shifted instantly. One moment. A man introduced himself as Rob from finance. Sir, I said evenly, your dealership pulled my 9-year-old son's social security number yesterday. Silence. Then, that shouldn't be possible. It happened. He asked for the name on the application. I said it. My sister's. There was background movement on his end. A chair scraping. Muffled voices. Then Rob lowered his voice. Mom, is she related to you? Yes. Another pause. She's here. My pulse kicked hard. Here where? In my office. She's finalizing paperwork. I didn't think. I moved. Do not let her sign anything, I said. Do not run another check. I'm on my way. I hung up before he could respond. Northgate Motors looked like every other dealership. Bright windows, polished cars, people smiling over paperwork. A place where futures are purchased in monthly installments. I walked straight to the finance area. Rob recognized me immediately. His expression shifted from professional to uncomfortable. And then I saw her. My sister sat confidently in a leather chair, folder on her lap, smiling like she belonged there. When she saw me, her smile froze, just for half a second. Then it returned. Oh my God, she said loudly. What are you doing here? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I set the printed inquiry history letter on Rob's desk and slid it forward. This, I said calmly, is my son's credit pull history. Then I looked at her. And you're going to stop using his identity. She laughed, light, dismissive. Are you serious right now? In public? Rob didn't laugh. He looked at the document, then at her. The social security number on your application, he said slowly, belongs to a minor. Her smile tightened. That's not possible, she said. You must have entered it wrong. Rob checked the system. There's also a phone number and email attached, he said. I gave him her number. He confirmed it matched. That's when her expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. She leaned back. Tried a new strategy. This is family, she said, voice softer now. She's twisting this. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, clarity. No, I replied quietly. You're the one twisting paperwork. Rob straightened in his chair. I'm escalating this to compliance. My sister's head snapped toward him. Don't be ridiculous. Just delete it. We don't delete credit pulls, Rob said firmly, especially if a child's information was used. She stood abruptly. You're trying to ruin me? She hissed at me. I didn't move. You ruined yourself. I answered. Rob printed the dealership application summary and signed it, dating the bottom. He slid it toward me. This confirms we ran the inquiry, he said, and that it's paused. Paper, signature, date. My sister saw it and understood immediately. Her voice dropped low. You can't prove I typed anything? I don't need to prove you typed. I said, I need to prove it happened. She grabbed her folder and tried to leave. Rob stepped slightly in her path. Not aggressively, just enough. I need to notify my general manager, he said. That's when my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Another lender email. Congratulations. Your loan has been approved. My son's name at the top. Approved. I looked up at my sister slowly. Whatever I had stopped here was only one thread. She wasn't applying once. She was applying everywhere. And suddenly the list in my hand didn't look like a map anymore. It looked like the beginning of something much bigger. Because if one loan was already approved, how much money had already landed somewhere? And how many more applications were still in motion? Paper trails and courtrooms. The next morning, my phone rang before sunrise. Unknown number. I answered quietly so I wouldn't wake my son. May I speak with Elias Carter? A man asked. My stomach tightened. This is his mother. There was a brief pause. I'm calling regarding an application verification. I cut him off. He is 9 years old. He did not apply for anything. The tone on the other end changed immediately. More careful, more formal. Mom, I'm flagging this as potential child identity theft. Do you have a case number? That question kept coming up. Case number. Everyone wanted one. Lenders, banks, fraud departments. So I did what turned this from family drama into documentation. I went to the police station, not because I expected flashing lights and handcuffs that morning, but because I needed something official. Something that forced institutions to stop treating this like a misunderstanding between relatives. Officer Ramirez listened while I laid everything out: the alert letter, the inquiry history, the dealership printout, the matching phone number, the approved loan email. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said plainly, a minor's social security number was used. That qualifies as identity theft. He typed for a few minutes, then printed a report, incident number, date, names, real ink on real paper. Keep everything, he advised. Screenshots, messages, emails. If she contacts you, save it. I nodded, because of course she would contact me, and she did. On the drive home, she left a voicemail, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. You're taking this too far, she said sweetly. If you keep pushing, you're going to make things worse for everyone. Worse for everyone? That meant worse for her. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Renee, an attorney recommended by a friend. I told her one sentence. It involves my child. She saw me that same afternoon. I laid the documents across her desk in a clean stack. One inquiry history letter, the dealership signed statement, the lender case numbers, a police incident report, the screenshots of my sister's texts. Renee read silently. Then she looked up. This is clean, she said. Clean, I repeated. On paper, she clarified. Judges don't like cases involving kids, and they really don't like patterns. She wrote 3 words on a legal pad. Emergency protective order. We're asking for 2 things immediately, she explained. 1. An injunction stopping her from using your son's identity. 2. Preservation of evidence, devices, emails, applications, and the credit bureaus. You already froze the file. Good. That shows you acted responsibly. Then she saw the text message from my sister. Don't make this weird. It's family. Renee tapped the screen lightly. That, she said, is pressure, and pressure implies awareness. By the next morning, we were in court. My sister arrived dressed like she was attending a professional seminar. Calm, polished, confident. She gave me that tight smile, the one she uses when she thinks she's smarter than everyone in the room. The judge didn't waste time. I want the inquiry history, he said immediately. Renee handed it over. The judge read each line out loud. Personal loan inquiry. Second personal loan inquiry. Retail financing inquiry. Auto finance inquiry. With every entry, my sister's expression shifted slightly, not panic, but calculation. The judge finally looked up. Explain how a 9-year-old accumulates this many credit pulls. Her attorney stood. Your Honor, my client was attempting to assist the family. The judge raised a hand. No speeches. What was done? Silence. Renee stepped forward and presented the dealership's signed statement. Application tied to Ms. Carter's phone number and email, she said calmly. The judge turned to my sister. Does that phone number belong to you? Her attorney started to object. The judge didn't even look at him. Yes or no? My sister swallowed. Yes. The judge nodded once and reviewed the police report. Then he leaned back slightly. Family, he said slowly. It's not authorization. He began writing. This court orders Miss Carter to immediately cease any use of the minor's identifying information. He stated, no direct or indirect contact with the child. All devices and records connected to these applications must be preserved. My sister shifted in her seat. This is being blown out of proportion, she said tightly. The judge's voice stayed level. I am protecting a child. Then he added one more sentence. This matter is referred for criminal review. That word changed the air in the room. Criminal. Outside the courtroom, my sister stepped close, anger replacing charm. You just destroyed me, she whispered. I met her gaze evenly. You used my child's identity, I said. I just documented it. By the end of the day, copies of the signed order were delivered everywhere they needed to go. The bank, the lenders, the dealership. Doors were closing. But I wasn't celebrating, because criminal review meant investigation, An investigation meant this wasn't over. 2 weeks later, a detective called. She was interviewed. He said. She denied involvement. My jaw tightened. And her denial doesn't align with the application records or the device data. I held my breath. She's being charged. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. For the first time, this wasn't a family argument. It was a case file. But even as charges were filed, another thought pressed against my mind. If she was willing to risk criminal charges, what was she so desperate for? And how much money had already moved before I caught it? When the system stopped smiling, a month after the courtroom hearing, the first letter arrived that didn't make my hands shake. It was from one of the lenders. Account voided. Minor identity theft confirmed. Short, formal, almost emotionless. But to me it felt like oxygen. Then another letter came, and another. Each one stated the same thing in slightly different language. The application had been confirmed as fraudulent, the account closed, the balance erased, the inquiry removed. The credit bureau followed with a sterile notice that meant everything. All unauthorized inquiries have been deleted. Minor file remains frozen. No celebration, no apology. Just correction. The paperwork was slowly undoing what had been done. Meanwhile, the criminal case moved forward. Detective Harmon called periodically with updates. Each time, his tone was measured, never dramatic. They pulled device logs. He told me once. Applications were submitted from a laptop registered to her address. Another time, the email tied to the applications was accessed from her IP. Every detail stacked on top of the next like bricks. When the official charging documents were filed, the wording was clinical: identity theft, fraudulent use of identifying information of a minor, attempted financial fraud. Reading it felt surreal. This wasn't gossip anymore. It wasn't a family disagreement. It was a state case. My sister hired a new attorney. There were negotiations. There were arguments about intent, about stress, about financial hardship. But here's what no one could argue with. The inquiry history list. The dealership's signed confirmation. The matching phone number and email. The preserved text messages. The police report. The judge's order. Paper beat personality. Eventually, the prosecutor offered a plea agreement, reduced charges in exchange for admission, restitution, probation, mandatory financial fraud counseling, and a permanent criminal record tied to identity misuse involving a minor. I wasn't in the room when she signed it, but I was notified when it was done. She accepted. Detective Harmon told me. No trial. I sat at the kitchen table after that call and just stared at the wall for a few minutes. Not because I was relieved, not because I was angry, but because something had finally landed. Consequences. There were conditions attached to her probation: no contact with my son, no access to his identifying information, for court-monitored compliance, for restitution payments for investigative and legal costs. The no contact order was extended, long enough to matter. The final piece came quietly, like most real endings do. A certified letter from the court confirming the plea had been entered into record, and the protective order would remain enforceable. Stamped. Filed. Permanent. That night, my son sat at the table coloring dinosaurs like the world was exactly as it should be. He looked up at me and asked, "Is everything fixed?" I crouched down so we were eye level. "Yes," I said softly. "Everything that needed fixing is being fixed." He nodded, satisfied. Kids trust in absolutes. Adults know better. I learned something through all of this that I didn't expect. Family doesn't excuse harm. Charm doesn't erase evidence. And confidence doesn't survive documentation. My sister tried to lean on three things: emotion, pressure, and the word family. But systems don't respond to emotion. They respond to proof. And proof was what changed everything. Months later, life felt normal again. School drop-offs, grocery lists, soccer practices. But I also added something new to my routine. Every year, I check my son's credit file. Not because I expect another betrayal, but because I understand now how quietly damage can begin. The scary part isn't the confrontation. It's the silence before it. If I had ignored that first envelope, if I had brushed it off as a mistake, if I had called her first instead of freezing the file, how much worse would it have become? How many loans would have gone through? How long before my son turned 18 and discovered his adult life started in debt? That letter didn't just expose fraud. It exposed a truth. Sometimes the people closest to you assume you won't check. They assume you won't document. They assume you'll keep it in the family. I didn't, and that made all the difference. But here's the part that still lingers. If I hadn't opened that envelope the moment I walked in, would I have caught it in time? Or would the real damage have shown up years later, when it was too late to undo? And if you were in my place, would you have handled it the same way? The cost of silence. 3 months after the plea agreement, I received the final official update. Probation terms finalized, restitution schedule approved, protective order active. The system had finished its part. But closure doesn't arrive in a certified envelope. It shows up quietly, usually when you least expect it. One afternoon, I got a call from a victim services coordinator assigned to the case. She spoke gently but directly. "I want to make sure you understand something," she said. "What you did, reporting this immediately, prevented long-term financial damage. Most minor identity theft cases go unnoticed for years." Years. That word stuck with me, because she was right. Children don't check credit reports. They don't apply for mortgages. They don't open bank accounts on their own. Fraud involving minors often sits dormant until adulthood, when they apply for college loans, apartments, or their first car. That's when it surfaces. At 18, with interest. If I had ignored that first letter, my son might have started adulthood already behind. Instead, every fraudulent inquiry was removed, every application voided, every lender notified with documented confirmation. His credit file was cleared, locked, protected. Financially, the damage had been contained. Emotionally, that took longer. Family gatherings changed. Invitations shifted. There were conversations I didn't participate in and narratives I knew were being shaped without me in the room. Some relatives quietly sided with her. "People make mistakes," they said. "She was under pressure. You didn't have to take it that far." But here's what no one else had: the list, the timeline, the evidence, and the reality that this wasn't a one-time panic decision. It was repeated, calculated, and escalating. One application might have been desperation. 7 inquiries were strategy. The auto loan attempt proved intent. The approved personal loan email proved action. And the pressure texts proved awareness. This wasn't about ruining someone's life. It was about protecting a child's future. Eventually, the restitution payments began. Small amounts transferred monthly under court supervision. I didn't celebrate them. They weren't victories. They were reminders. One evening, months later, I received an unexpected email from her. Not a violation of the protective order sent through her attorney's office. It was short. She claimed she never meant for it to go that far. She said she planned to pay it back before anyone noticed. She said she didn't think it would actually affect him. That line stopped me. She didn't think it would affect him. That's the danger of fraud involving children. It feels invisible until it isn't. I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, but because everything that needed to be said had already been documented in court filings, police reports, and lender confirmations. Silence, this time, wasn't avoidance, it was boundary. A year later, I ran another credit check for my son, 0 inquiries, 0 accounts, frozen file intact, clean. I printed the confirmation and added it to a folder labeled with his name. Not because I expect another incident, but because I understand now that protection isn't paranoia, it's preparation. People sometimes ask me what the hardest part was. It wasn't the courtroom. It wasn't the police report. It wasn't even seeing my sister at the dealership. The hardest part was realizing that trust and documentation are not the same thing. You can love someone. You can grow up with someone. You can share holidays and memories and history, and still need proof. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: fraud thrives in hesitation, in embarrassment, in the hope that family will handle it privately. But protection lives in action, in freezing files, in saving screenshots, in getting case numbers, in refusing to be pressured into silence. Today, my son is older, still blissfully unaware of how close his future came to being compromised. And that's exactly how it should be. But sometimes I think back to that first envelope. What if I had set it aside? What if I had waited a week? What if I had believed the text message that said, "Don't make this weird. It's family"? How many more approvals would have come through? How much more money would have moved? How deep would the damage have gone before I noticed? That envelope wasn't just paper. It was a warning. And the real lesson wasn't about fraud. It was about vigilance. Because sometimes the people who assume you won't check are counting on your silence. And the only reason this story ends differently is because I didn't stay quiet.